Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Forum for Excellence 2021. My name is Molly Cook with the Forum for Excellence Planning Committee, and I'll be your moderator for today's session. I'm joined by Dawn Hughes, who will be providing tech support. This breakout session is Frameworks, Resources, and Best Practice Models along Illinois' work-based learning continuum. A couple of housekeeping items before we get started with our presenters. All of our attendees have the ability to be unmuted, but we ask that you refrain from doing this until the end of the session during our Q&A portion. If you have questions or comments as this session proceeds, please post those in the Zoom chat and not the Whova chat. You can access today's presentation on the Whova app. This session will be recorded, and you can locate the recording on our Forum for Excellence website following the end of this conference. We will post this website in the chat, but you can also access it on the Whova app under Resources and Forum page. If you are looking for a certificate of professional development, those will come 2 weeks after this conference. If you need a certificate of professional development, your name will need to be accurate in this Zoom meeting for attendance purposes. And if you need help with knowing how to change your name on the Zoom meeting, you can message me in the chat. Now I would like to introduce you to Emily and Heather. They'll be our presenters today. So thank you so much for taking the time to present, and I'll turn it away to you.
Thanks so much, Molly. Welcome, everyone. So excited to see you all on here. My name is Emily Ruska. I'm Director of State Policy and Strategy at Education Systems Center at Northern Illinois University, and I will be one of your guides here today.
And hi, everyone. Excited to be here as well. This is an area of work that I love and am heavily engaged in, so excited to share with you all. And I'm Heather Penzak. I'm a Policy and Program Manager here at Ed Systems.
Awesome. So we'll dive right in. The way we'll go through today is I'm going to provide a little background on us at Ed Systems, as well as on some state policy frameworks regarding work-based learning. And then we're really going to get to the meat of it, where Heather is going to share all of her wisdom around work-based learning and what it looks like on the ground and all of the different resources that are available to help folks planning and developing work-based learning experiences. So a little bit about us at Ed Systems. We are a education and workforce policy shop. We work at a few different levels in a few different areas. So our thematic areas are college and career pathway systems. So thinking about contextualized learning and experiences that prepare young people for the future. Bridges to post-secondary, smoothing that transition between secondary and post-secondary through things like early college credit, as well as transitional instruction to reduce the need for remediation at the post-secondary level, and then data impact and leadership. So what does it mean to develop and use systems of data to help identify, shine a flashlight on areas for work and continuously improve our efforts. Like I said, we work at a couple of different levels. One of those levels is at the statewide level in terms of statewide policy and statewide initiatives, collaborating closely with state agencies and leaders across Illinois, as well as at the community networks level, which really is where we're getting into the weeds with community partners across the state, helping them understand what policy windows are available to them and implementing different exciting innovations. And then finally in innovation, we kind of are always keeping an eye towards what's new and exciting and what potential opportunities there might be to enhance work in the field to really support students to succeed. So like I said, I'm going to dive into just some state college and career readiness policy and how that factors in here. So I'm not going to go through each and every one of the frameworks listed on this slide, but suffice to say that over the last decade plus, the state of Illinois has been doing a lot of different work to think about what does it mean to ensure that a student is college and career ready. So that means what does it mean when we're thinking about giving them the career focused instruction that can support them to explore their interests and what potential occupations they could be interested in, as well as what does it mean to kind of shore up their academic experience and ensure that they have the academic readiness and aren't going to be slowed down by the potential for remediation at the post-secondary level. So we've done it in a variety of ways. One of the kind of hallmarks of this has been the Post-Secondary and Workforce Readiness Act, which was unanimously passed and signed into law in 2016. 2016. And it's a student-centered and competency-based approach that has 4 main strategies in it that have been laced throughout a lot of these other policy areas that are listed here. So in terms of our dual credit, how we incentivize priority dual credit courses as part of our economic development planning, as part of overall college and career pathway strategies, and even in our school quality indicator under SS. So we really are, the state agencies and other partners have been working to ensure alignment across these different policy areas and kind of having the same type of approach or same type of philosophy behind the work. So one of those examples is the College and Career Pathways Endorsement Framework, which came through the Post-Secondary and Workforce Readiness Act. And again, this is kind of another example of a student-centered and competency-based approach, right? So the kind of core components of that College and Career Pathway Endorsement are on the left there. And as you see, one of the core pieces of that, in addition to sort of the academic and coursework pieces, is professional learning. And so that covers a suite of work-based learning experiences along a continuum that I'll mention in just a second, and Heather will get into more depth on. But the other piece that came in through the College and Career Pathway Endorsement process was that, in close collaboration with employers in the field and secondary and post-secondary partners, the recommended technical and essential employability competencies have been developed across the endorsement areas as defined in the PWR Act. So those endorsement areas are essentially clusters of career clusters, and so it gives us a little bit more of a targeted approach for saying, within, say, finance and business services, what are those core technical competencies and essential cross-cutting essential competencies that will support an individual to enter into and succeed in entry-level work in that field. So I think we have an example of what those competencies look like on the next slide, if I remember correctly. Thanks, Heather. Yeah, so on the left, you have the cross-sector, some of the top 10 cross-sector essential employability competency statements. So after doing all of this work with employers across these different endorsement areas, certainly there are common themes that emerged across all fields. And so those were distilled into the essential employability competency statements. And then for each of those endorsement areas, like I said, there were these competency statements defined for those areas that are specific to those endorsement areas. And those can guide not only curricular development, but also really work-based learning. And that's kind of part of why we wanted to tie that in here today. So another example of how these college and career readiness frameworks have been instantiated into practice or even more outlined in frameworks is our Perkins Model Programs of Study guides, which were developed across the areas listed here through the support of the Illinois Community College Board and in close collaboration with an advisory committee for each of these groups. Each of these groups, we pulled together an advisory committee of secondary partners, post-secondary partners, and employers, and really developed saying, okay, given these college and career readiness frameworks that we have, and given the Perkins Program of Study framework that we have, what does it mean to thoughtfully design model programs of study that are grounded in labor market information, back mapped through the promising credentials that will get you into those jobs that are growing and with strong wages, what credential programs can lead into those occupations, what courses are required, and from there kind of back mapping into what would a course progression look like from secondary into post-secondary that would best prepare young people in Illinois to succeed in these fields. So that was just another example, and in that is included recommendations around work-based learning and how that can be sequenced in. And it's grounded in the College and Career Pathway Endorsement Framework and those component parts, including that professional learning component. And so across all of these, and I'm getting close to the end here, across all of these, underlying it is a recognition that a core part of preparing a young person for success in college and career is through work-based learning, professional learning opportunities. And Illinois has an adopted work-based learning continuum outlined here, and this is partially defined in statute in the Post-Secondary and Workforce Readiness Act. It is clearly articulated through the Illinois Career Pathways Dictionary, which I know we have a link to in the next slide when we get there. But really, it's recognizing that work-based learning happens along a continuum, and it involves an increasing intensity of employer engagement, and involves an increasing level of participation by the young person that's engaged in that effort, and it scaffolds various levels of awareness and skill development to get to that ultimate to get to these kind of higher level experiences. So things like career awareness and career exploration are a little bit lighter touch perhaps, but are really important kind of early stages of work-based learning. And then you get into things like team-based challenges and career development experiences, the latter of which is the Illinois term for internship. So recognizing that there's a whole suite of experiences that folks may have a variety of terms for, but that we actually have really robust definitions for each of these different component parts that can be used to guide development and implementation of work-based learning. So to that end, I'll just highlight a couple of resources and then hand it over to Heather to give you a much more tactical set of resources and examples. But we have two key resources that we can share with you today. One is the Career Development Experience Toolkit, which soup to nuts explains what it means to set up a career development experience, including what does it look like to recruit employers, what does it look like to recruit students, how do you consider the setup of that program to best meet student needs and develop their skills, all of those different things. There's also a companion piece that helps translate that a little bit more explicitly to out-of-school youth and just populations that are not in a secondary context. And then the other key resource we have is the Illinois Career Pathways Dictionary, which is adopted across all the education and workforce agencies in the state. It includes the state's unified career pathways definition, as well as a lot of implementation guidance for the component parts around career pathways. So all of the definitions for work-based learning related activities are in here. There's just a lot of information in there as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Heather, who's going to get into the weeds with you here and explain a little bit more about that continuum and what it looks like on the ground.
Thanks, Emily, and hi again all. So I'm going to take some time here, and like Emily said, I'm really going to unpack 3 different pieces of the continuum. So career exploration, team-based challenges, and career development experiences. So we'll go along through each of these, unpack that definition that lives within the Career Pathways Dictionary, and then show some best practices, resources, and some models for each of those. The hope with all of these things is really thinking through how you could take these different models and resources and maybe enhance a certain experience that you already offer, or even design and implement a completely new experience. And so what I would like to start out with here is that there's so many different models and so many different ways to do these work-based learning experiences. I think as you start to become familiar today with these definitions from the Career Pathways Dictionary, they are definitions, but they're written in a way that's broad enough to encompass a variety of experiences, but also explicit enough to say, like, here's like the minimum threshold of quality if you're offering one of these types of experiences. And so we have a network within Illinois, launched this back in October of 2020 to really bring folks together from across the state. And we have some national attendees who show up as well. But to say, okay, what are those different innovative models that are happening? And so we have communities share out and present on what they're up to. We have time for questions and folks share with one another. And it really just becomes that space to build and think about, like, how are we going to not just create this new exciting event, but create it in a way that's sustainable, create it in a way that's high quality, that ultimately broadens access, especially as we think about populations who are underrepresented and not always served by these work-based learning experiences, especially when we think about what social capital can do for our Black and Latinx students, and any students who are not gaining access to that social capital within their own networks or already happening within school, and what a great resource work-based learning can be for that, to connect them with those industry professionals. A big piece of it, I mean, my favorite part is just how communities connect with one another. So myself, Emily, our team at Systems, we have expertise on work-based learning, but there's also so much happening that we might not even know, right? And so as those communities come in and as they share and they talk to one another, those connections are built and they can continue to get in the weeds on those. So, and also too, to the piece about all those different policy frameworks and levers that Emily was referring to, this is a space where we start to bubble up. Like, are there needs for policy changes or support systems as communities are really trying to implement these experiences and implement them at scale, right? To ultimately serve all students, and to create work-based learning is not just something that's like an add-on or an extracurricular, but something that is truly embedded within that student's experience. So Emily talked about the college and career pathway endorsement, that very much if a student receives that, then they had a suite of those work-based learning continuum experiences. But we know too, as students show up to post-secondary, they may be starting at the beginning of the continuum. Maybe they thought they wanted to be a nurse in high school, and then they did one class that had a little bit of blood in it and are like, absolutely not, I think I'm going to be an accountant now. Right. So then how do we start them again at the continuum to say, well, let's explore what it means to be in that industry. And so there's a link here to the I-WIN Resource Hub. I'm going to go through a lot of those resources today, But also, if you would like to subscribe to that newsletter and attend our communities of practice, we're going to talk about the full continuum for specific industry areas throughout this school year. And I know Molly and the team too here at ICCB will be sharing this presentation. There's a ton of hyperlinks in here, so definitely encourage you all to check those out. But just to give a quick preview here, so when IWIN launched, these are some of the topics that we looked at over this last school year. Really targeting and career development experiences in health sciences. A lot of folks have questions about how do you get through HIPAA? And you don't really get through HIPAA, you just do HIPAA and you understand how to like bring your students through HIPAA and have the right qualified people to deliver those types of presentations. We talked a lot about host and partner engagement, always a big question for folks, like how do you engage with partners? What do you say to them? What do you expect to them? So lots of really fun things that we did this last school year and kind of moving into this next school year. Like I mentioned, we'll do kind of monthly, bi-monthly focused continuum discussions within each experience. And then we're also going to be offering, depending on my bandwidth, maybe before the summer, but definitely in the summer, some design workshops and I do, we do type format. I do, we do, you do type format to really get you to come in and dive deeply into these experiences and design them. With that, and again, I know we put in the chat before and Emily's putting some links in there too, but would really encourage you to ask questions. They can get weedy, they can be broad, they can be whatever they need to be. We are very much here to answer those questions for you all. So I'm going to start on the continuum here with career exploration. And so with each experience that I'll talk about, I'm going to flag up the definition from the dictionary and then unpack it a bit. I will say within this presentation, I've included more resources and best practices and I'm verbally going to share here. But, as a former high school teacher, former internship coordinator, manager, I just like to put all this information there and then you can look at it and digest it as you need to in hopes that, one or multiple of these resources will serve a need for you and your community. So career exploration from the dictionary is an activity such as a job shadow, attendance at a career exposition, or employer site visit, providing an individual with the ability to engage directly with employers for the purpose of gaining knowledge of one or more industry sectors or occupations. I bolded these two things here because I think career exploration, in my experience, is for sure a term that gets thrown around and used in lots of different ways. But really, if we are engaging a student, a young person in career exploration, then we are engaging them directly with employers. They're not just watching a video or reading about something or taking a survey. They have an opportunity to really ask a question that is weedy or that is broad to that industry person, that employer, and they're with them, right? Whether through Zoom or in person, they are engaging directly with them. Also, that gaining knowledge of one or more kind of industry sectors or occupations. We all know that within each sector, there are countless amounts of routes that you can take and occupations. And just because a young person is interested in health sciences or in business, there's so much to unpack within that industry area and expose students to. So the more that they can learn about multiple occupations, kind of multiple sectors within, I mean, even this is a practice I've seen a lot of communities do. If they have a manufacturing partner, for example, who already does a lot of like guest speaking and maybe job shadows about their floor, right? And the workers who are on the floor and what that looks like there. Could they also provide guest speakers within their accounting or their business or their HR department, right? And expose students that you might be interested in manufacturing. And even within that, there's all these different industries represented within a business. But so we're at the beginning of the continuum here, really just getting students engaging directly, connecting to folks. And so just put in some different best practices here as you do engage with those industry experts, really creating opportunities for small groups or one-on-one conversations. Also thinking through, some of your youth and even some of your graduates, right? I think about this a lot, like with the high school space, like some of your post-secondary or your students who are in that community college or even like 4-year space, how they can come in and talk about their experience and their path as they're like in that moment right now. And also having industry experts too facilitate workshops. So there's the typical ways to engage them, right? They come in, they do a guest speaking, there's a panel, there's a job shadow or a site visit, but to embed it in coursework and even have them come in and teach a topic for the day as they're also talking about their occupation and their industry is a really great way to just bring it all together and connect that learning to the industry and to that person. And for students sometimes to realize, like, why should I care about this class? Well, here's a person who can talk you through that, through this topic and how they apply it within their own role. The meaningful participant engagement is a big one for me when I think about career exploration, and participant refers to anyone who's going to engage in career exploration, right? From an elementary school student to a college student to an adult learner. And so where are they actually spending some time researching that organization or individual who they're going to be hearing about within the event, and spending some time too to develop questions that they want to ask. I think a lot of times as I worked with people, they don't always even know what question to ask. They get to the event and they're like, I'm just listening, I don't know. And then they go home and they're like, I wish I would have asked them all these different questions. So giving them that moment to prep some questions before they get there, it builds confidence. It also increases the likelihood that they'll actually ask a question. And then during the event, just, really making sure that you all, or whoever's kind of managing the event, is facilitating those conversations and interactions. If this is the first time that someone has engaged in a career exploration event, it's likely then the first time they've had to do like small talk or networking with industry folks. And so it can be intimidating, it can be awkward, especially as we all were behind screens for so long and then we're in person again, or even small talking on a screen. Like, there's so many different skills there. And so helping facilitate that, and also figuring out ways that they can connect afterwards. So whether it's them developing a LinkedIn that they can share, if there's like business cards, I've created those for organizations that I've been with, where it has the person's name, email, maybe like their major within the school or something like that. And then spend time too reflecting. So how did the experience go? What insights did they gain? Even as much as you can connect it to then their continued work within their pathway. Okay, so you really like this. Like, here's how you can continue to take courses. You can pursue this education or training, right? If you really like that occupation, let's talk about the different paths that there are to get there. And so linked here, and again, thank you, Dawn, for that reminder. The handout for this presentation is in there. I literally just linked a whole bunch of different resources for you all to look through. So JFF, Jobs for the Future, they have a really great guide about doing these pieces, and they'll, we have our definitions in Illinois, and maybe some things will look a little bit different, but generally it very much fits what we do. Chicago Public Schools, work closely with them to develop a work-based learning toolkit that's aligned to our state's work-based learning continuum. So all the different tips and fact sheets and handouts they have will meet that. We also offered a workshop this past summer. So included those recordings, those templates for you. And again, linked to the iWin Resource Hub and some specific pieces there. But I'm going to be moving on to team-based challenges, but would love, I don't see anything in the chat, but if there's questions about career exploration, or even if you all want to put in the chat, some of your best practices, things maybe I didn't share, some insights you've had, some successes or challenges that you've had with career exploration, would love to see that in the chat. While you're maybe thinking of those, I'll start talking about team-based challenges, but very much will pause and stop as you all might have questions or comments in there. And so team-based challenges, the recommended practice here is that they're moving along a continuum. So before an individual is engaging in team-based challenges, they should have engaged in some sort of career exploration, right? That career exploration has helped them unpack, I still like this industry, it's still something I want to explore, right? But I'd like to engage more deeply in it. I will say here, like the value of the continuum is along the way, you're increasing that intensity, but you're also problematizing along the way for that individual if they still like this industry, if they still like that occupation, if this is still the direction they want to go. And for them to find out at any point along the continuum that they no longer want to keep going on that path, it's just, it actually doesn't interest them. They don't know if they want to work on the skills there. They're not interested in kind of the path to get there, right? It just doesn't seem like it fits with the type of life they want to lead. That's a perfectly great outcome as well, right? That they can now say, okay, so I didn't like that, but what did I like? What should I unpack there? And kind of like continue to move forward in. So a team-based challenge, you hear a lot about like project-based learning. It very much is that, except it has a few additional pieces here. So again, from the dictionary, it's a group problem-based learning project relating to an individual's career area of interest that involves a problem relating to employers within that area, including mentoring from adults with expertise in that area, and requires the individual to present the outcomes of the project. So here again, you have those pieces about direct engagement with industry and having that mentorship, and also the presentation of the outcomes of the project. So them sharing out about that experience. And this, I would say, a team-based challenge is, I don't want to say easy, but I think it's one of the best ones to really embed within a course, to relate to a topic within that course, to embed, to get students connected to that industry right away. I highly suggest these for those introductory level courses that can be just kind of dry and not as exciting for students, even though it is building a foundation for them that they need to have to continue on within the pathway. If you can have that introductory course and also have industry folks coming in to say like, yes, like this is again, why you need to learn this stuff. Here's how you might apply it. Here's how I've applied it, right? Is a really great way to keep them interested and keep them understanding what they need to know and the skills and content they need to be aware of to be successful in that industry.
And Heather, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like I've heard of examples where there have been, you know, it's not only in the, like, using a health science example, that it's not only in the biology class, but that also you could have in the English class, you could have kind of a public health lens on an issue and have them do a research paper on a public health implication, or even history, or those kinds of things. So kind of thinking about ways that you can cross-pollinate the content of that team-based challenge across courses can be really powerful as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's been examples too, like one of my favorite team-based challenges I've seen is like implicit bias, right? So where are they unpacking maybe within an English course or a history or a marketing course or something, like where do they look at materials that an organization, an employer is sharing, and where they might be showing like bias within those, and they're not actually representing all their different like all their different like stakeholders and pieces and really representing their community, right? And they could do that within their own school, right? Like the handouts that a school is creating and sharing, like, does that actually represent the student population, right? So there's really great ways to do that and unpack it while still building some essential and technical skills. And so just some best practices flagged here. You know, I think a lot we say employers, and we think that we need to go to this like external for-profit kind of corporate person to get mentorship and get folks with expertise. And I would really encourage you to unpack that, like industry, so mentoring from adults with expertise. Like there are a lot of those within spaces, especially at the post-secondary space, right, where they can engage and be those mentors. The real piece here is that as students are engaging in a team-based challenge, and especially as they're moving into career development experiences, they should be engaging with someone other than their instructor. You know, again, as a former teacher myself, as an even current student now, like you figure out your class, right? You figure out your instructor, you figure out the way they work, you figure out what you got to do to be successful in there. But then engaging in a team-based challenge, now you have this new mentor. So they have new expectations, they have new ways of working with you, and that pushes you out of your comfort zone that you might have gotten to within that course, right? And you're like, oh, okay, like I didn't know I should add that level of detail, or I didn't know I should communicate with you ahead of time in this way. Right. So it just builds that capacity for them to really work on a collaborative level with that mentor in a way that is meaningful, and it's going to build their skills for success. And so again, thinking about your, you know, post-secondary partners, either like within your own space, or even thinking about maybe like some four-year spaces, right? If you're at the community college level, but also community-based organization, if any of the families of the individuals that you work with can be included in there, and then also any in-house staff, right? So where you have your accounting department or your maintenance department or any of those folks who could also provide that mentorship. Like I mentioned earlier, really embedding it within coursework, especially those introductory level courses. And as you might be working too with high school partners who are looking to implement that college and career pathway endorsement or implement high quality work-based learning, this is a great opportunity within those dual credit courses. Even having some, you know, faculty or representatives from that post-secondary space serving as those mentors with the high school students for that dual credit course. Would also encourage you to just think about where there's already existing opportunities or models, project-based learning, problem-based learning. I know it can get called all kinds of different things, is happening in a lot of courses. And really it's thinking through, where do we build from those? And we have these assets, we have these resources, we have teachers who are already doing these things. And where do we just plug in a few pieces, right? Bringing in that mentor, bringing in a space to do the presentation. And the presentation component of a team-based challenge can actually be a really great way to build momentum and build motivation within your team to continue to develop and embed these experiences. So it can feel sometimes like another new thing to do, but as you might have a motivated instructor or individual who wants to spearhead and lead these team-based challenges, if they were to invite others who you're kind of trying to bring into that fold, bring into that mix and do the same, when they come in and they see the presentation and what those students, what those learners have come up with and what they're presenting and how they work with that industry mentor, it can really start to just inspire them and give them some ideas for what this can look like in their space and how it could actually enhance the work that they're already doing, either within a course or other context. And so within the student experience, and I think this is another piece that sometimes is folks are really excited about team-based challenges and other folks are like, I don't know about that. Like this is all student driven. Like it seems like things could go awry, right? So there's definitely a mindset here and certain, individuals who I would encourage you to think about to first pilot this type of experience and then bring others along because it really is student driven. So students are identifying the problem, they're doing the research, they're developing a plan, they're evaluating, they're re-examining, and then they're presenting and reflecting to maybe come back to a new problem, right? I put the stars here within this cycle because those are really the spaces that your industry mentor can come in and provide some insight. So as individuals might do their initial research, they talk to their mentor, they show their mentor this research, they say, hey, here's the things we found, and we're going to start developing a plan. And then mentor might be like, you have some good stuff here, but you're missing this piece. Like, why don't you look at this resource, or why don't you kind of think about the way this is, right, to better inform their plan. And their plan as well gets reviewed by their mentor problematizes it, gives them some feedback, and they keep kind of going through the cycle there. I get questions a lot about with the industry mentor, what the time commitment is for them. And so a team-based challenge is actually a great way if you're trying to establish a partner and kind of get them involved working with your students in work-based learning, because the lift is not high on the partner. Maybe it's an hour per week. A half hour of it is they're reviewing some materials that the students had sent over to them. A half hour of it is maybe meeting with them on Zoom or in person to talk through it, right? Whereas when you move into like a career development experience, that's a much more kind of bandwidth piece, time commitment on the side of that industry mentor. But this is one of those that they can just start working with students. They can see the value, the skill, the insights that students can bring. And really kind of get excited to work with you in a more robust space after this experience. But again, very self-directed by students, and teachers are the facilitators or teachers, coordinators, whatever kind of working on this. They're there to guide the students along, to ping them, to problematize them, make sure they're kind of meeting their deadlines and moving along as needed. But the students are driving the whole thing. Like their ways that they want to address a problem, the solutions they come up with are all student driven. And so again, that can be kind of a space that not every instructor, not every person is kind of ready to facilitate. It might need some time to get used to. We do have, though, as kind of some inspiration and thinking, a statewide team-based challenge resource bank. So again, this is on the iWin Hub. We have a couple of different things. So we have some ideas for inspiration for each endorsement area to get you thinking about like, oh yeah, I kind of do something like that. And I could build this out as a team-based challenge. We have a template as well for you to kind of input and kind of walk through your team-based challenge and unpack it as a resource. And then we also have spelled out team-based challenges. So communities who have been doing this are doing this. These are those different exemplars that continue to be in process, right? As they test it out each year, they might be adapting it a bit, but taking through, all the way through the title, who their partners are, what problems they're investigating, and then breaking down that project outline. So, team-based challenges, like this example was a week-long project. So it was pretty quick, right? Other team-based challenges might go on for 4 weeks, a whole semester, right? It really just depends on what you want to do, how you want to embed it, where you want to incorporate this experience. And so a list here too of some additional team-based challenge resources. We've had some different recordings and CTSOs, career and technical student organizations, come on and present about, the work that they do and how they can support team-based challenges. But just lots of different pieces here. The Illinois Science and Technology Coalition put together a guidebook. You can look at like Educators Rising, Skills USA, Project Lead the Way. they have lots of different problems to get investigated. And you can, again, take those as inspiration, think about where they might connect. If you're thinking again about embedding it within a course, where they might connect to topics that are already being covered, and you can build on that example and that idea. The real key here, as you think about kind of cadencing out a team-based challenge, is you have this problem, and then how are students unpacking that and really being given time to meet with their mentor, reflect, plan, research, and present. And whatever that time looks like is whatever makes sense for you in that context. All right, those are team-based challenges. Again, we have so many resources on this if you want to dive into each individual one, but if you have questions about team-based challenges, if you have, again, different insights or successes that you've had or resources that you use, would love to see those in the chat. And as we move into career development experiences, this is where you're really engaging as an individual within that industry area. So, you know, during career exploration, you might have been in a small group talking to an industry mentor. You might have had a one-on-one experience, right? Team-based challenge, you've been working on a team to address a problem and work with a mentor. And then in a career development experience, you're really showing up as an individual and completing what's like an internship with a mentor at a host site and showing up and performing work for that person. And so here's the definition again from the Career Pathways Dictionary. It encompasses, you know, a broad array of experiences, but again, these 6 components are really what's there to say, here's kind of that minimum, like what needs to be there so that this is high quality and of value to both the student and to the partner. A big piece here is number 3, right? So there should be compensation or credit provided to that person. They're at this point engaging in work. So they are providing work product for that person. They also should be engaging in continued professional development. So we host high school interns here at the Ed Systems office. And the way that I think about their experience a lot is that, you know, 50% of the time, they're creating work product for Ed Systems, right? For a certain team member, for the team as a whole, right? But 50% of the time should be opportunities for them to engage in meetings and meet others and network, to engage in some professional development, maybe a task that builds a skill for them, or they're attending a webinar or a conference, right? Or doing some reading. But I think about it kind of in that 50-50 space. So while they should be providing work product, the goal is that they're ultimately learning and getting coaching and mentorship from the team here. There's also in number 5, that professional skills assessment. So there should be an opportunity in this. Again, you have an individual showing up and performing independently. There should be an opportunity for them to get assessed on their skills and to have a conversation with their mentor, whoever's coaching them and supporting them throughout this process, to say, where am I doing well? Where are there areas for improvement? What do I need as an individual to maybe perform even better? We all have those conversations every year. We get our yearly evaluations, we get raises or we don't, right? I don't know. But it's a great skill to have. And I think it can be a very intimidating space for people to go into those conversations, to hear feedback from their supervisor. And so using this moment to kind of build that capacity, build that for them to both take in that feedback, but also advocate and ask for themselves the things that they need or want to learn or need support on to be successful. And so I like to put this slide in here too. You know, sometimes people think like, oh, I got to implement this whole new thing now, career development experience. But it's really a bucket term, like a broad term that encompasses a lot of these different pieces. And there's probably even more names that could be put here. But your internships, school-based enterprises, your supervised agricultural experience, what was called cooperative education, I know is kind of going through some renaming. But it's really all those pieces. If a student is doing this definition that we just shared, then they're doing a career development experience. So you might call it something different, but this is, as long as it fits those parameters, it would fit within the bucket of a career development experience. And so there's lots of different models of this. You know, I think especially in this space where we've gone remote and we've explored some hybrid or fully virtual models. You have your typical space, right, where there's different daily or weekly tasks kind of assigned by the host. They have different deliverables. There's also micro internships where, you know, maybe these are about 30 hours long and they're very project based. So there's a certain deliverable that an individual is working towards. It's almost in a sense like a team-based challenge, but being performed at that individual level, but they're still doing the research and planning and addressing pieces while getting feedback from their mentor. I think about this a lot. You know, we used to do partner recruitment in my old organization. Our interns worked Monday through Thursday, 3 hours a day. And we would ask people like, what would you do if you had 3 extra hours in each day, right? What would you like to research? What would you like to know more about? What is this task that you've been putting off because you just don't have the time to do it, but it would be really great to have it. And it's a defined task that could be completed individually with, again, that feedback from the mentor. I also really love to see departmental rotations. So where a person can go into an industry area and they can work and they can see all the different pieces of that. So I know some of our partners in East St. Louis at BJC Healthcare, they do this a lot with their health science interns. You know, they look at kind of like the research side where they have like the Petri dishes and they're examining pieces. They're also in the patient care side, right? Because there's some piece about wanting to be in an industry and then really learning what it is to be in those different departments. So that can be a great way to even do kind of micro internships within a full internship. If like one department doesn't have capacity to do a full 60 hours, but maybe you have 3 departments that could do 20 hours each, but still have meaningful tasks within there. And also encourage you all to always think about in-house opportunities. So within our spaces, our organizations, we have multiple industry departments. So especially sometimes too, as you might be doing a career development experience for the first time, it can be a little like, oh, okay, what is going to be my framework, my model? What's going to be my process here? And testing that out in-house can create capacity and kind of build your muscle to then expand and get external partners. Also thinking, you know, as you might define, what are the competencies that an individual should gain as a result of career development experience? How could you then align that if your learners already have a part-time job? And maybe it's connecting with their supervisor at their job or connecting with their student and helping to align that already existing experience with the competencies that should be developed to count as a career development experience. This is a piece I put up here too, just to reflect that there's a lot that goes into implementing a career development experience, right? Excuse me, all the way from getting started and just clearly defining your team and what the roles are going to be, how you're doing outreach, both to participants and to those hosts that you want to engage in, what onboarding looks like. So how are you understanding on a very like deep level, like how will students get there? You know, if they have technology needs, if it's a virtual one, right? A big flag that I always like to put here for these types of experiences is if your host partner has specific HR requirements, that has like caught me up a few different times where I thought students were good to go. And then now they couldn't show up on their first day because there was an additional background check or something that had to be done. So really making sure that you have awareness and understanding of that so that individuals can start on their scheduled first day and there isn't this kind of like frustration and confusion happening. And then during it, where are you going to have intentional time to check in on how it's going initially, check in at a midpoint, check in at the end. If you have a longer term CDE that's going like a whole semester, I definitely suggest building in a site visit. But if it's a new host who's never done a career development experience before, I would also very much suggest a site visit either before or during, so that you're aware of the space that individuals are showing up to. And then those discussions and the professional skills assessment there. And then wrapping up too, I think really providing that opportunity for both the participants, those students, those young people, those adult learners to talk about how their experience was and where they might have suggestions for improvement, and also from the partner. A lot of times in these experiences, I think the partners get focused on and what they want and what they need and how it went for them. But you also need to understand from your participants, was that partner a good partner? Like, did they support that person to develop skills and assess them and provide mentorship? Or did that young person, I'm sorry, I always go to young person, student, my like high school brain, or did that person show up and they were just kind of like sitting at a desk all day and didn't really have anything to do, right? So you need to know from them too if your partner is a good partner. I also like to flag here to gather testimonials. I think these can be one of the more difficult experiences to get partners to say yes to. But as you gather testimonials and hear how it's going from both partners and individuals who are the participants, as you bring even, I would highly suggest, as you have a good partner, to connect with other partners that you're interested in bringing on to talk to them about their experience from like a partner to partner level. And then also supporting participants to update resumes, portfolios, and really capture what they did and what they learned and the skills that they gained through that experience. And so the participant, as I've kind of mentioned here, a few different times, but it's again that exposure to new expectations, a new environment that pushes them out of their comfort zone and expects them to perform and builds those essential employability and technical competencies. It's that authentic quality engagement. This career development experience is really the time. They might have built some social capital and built some connections before this, but this is really a moment when they can engage on a more extended time period and on a more personal level with some of the folks that they're working with. So it's really an opportunity to gain social capital and build their connections and their network. At the end of the day, will these individuals have someone to vouch for them when they're going for a job, when they have to provide a list of references, when they have to have someone say yes, this person can perform, this is how they showed up. Building that capacity and building their ability to even have that list of references is a really valuable thing for individuals. But they also should be valued as resources of talent who have background knowledge, right? By the time they're engaging in this experience, they've likely completed other work-based learning. They've likely completed some career-focused coursework. So they're not coming in as this kind of empty vessel. They are coming in as someone who is full of knowledge and full of experience and can actually provide really meaningful insights to these organizations, to these hosts, as they're just continuing to do the things the way that they're always done. And this person can come in and be like, well, why do you do it this way? I'm confused, right? And they can actually provide a lot of value in that. Just putting some research here about social networks and access to information. How much internships are that provider of capital, and they're allowing students, especially those from underrepresented or marginalized populations, to come in and access environments and access experiences that they might not otherwise. And just a flag here that I really has stuck with me a lot since I read this was that even when low income students of color have the academic qualifications to attend college or to attend, an additional training program, they just don't sometimes, right? Because they don't necessarily know all the different weedy moving pieces of that industry and of that program. And so being connected with networks, with individuals really provides that in reality, right now context of how to access those different opportunities and those paths. And so Emily mentioned this earlier, but the Career Development Experience Toolkit really does take you to and through the whole development of it. I like to call this my memoir of running a high school internship program, but it really will take you through each piece. I would definitely suggest, depending on the way that you learn, the document itself is over 100 pages long, but we do have a website created for it. So you can go to each different tab and just kind of see the piece that you're really interested in learning more about, whether that's that post outreach or that onboarding tab or the wrapping up tab. But all throughout, there's lots of different customizable templates, there's community models, all the different ways that this is happening and some resources to make it happen. And so again, there's the document, the website. One of my favorite parts of it are the customizable templates. It can take a lot of time to just create your participant profile, to create your host guidebook. Right. And so a lot of those templates are already there, teed up in Microsoft Word format for you to download and edit to fit your context, fit your needs, fit your program. And again, some additional resources here from our design workshop and also some different presentations that we've had from communities about the career development experiences that they have offered. And that actually wraps our conversation for today and what we were going to share with you all. But we do have some additional time here. Would love for you all to put things in the chat, or I know too, if you want to raise your hand and we can get you unmuted to share out loud. I assume they could raise their hand. We could know to unmute them, or you can put in the chat, please unmute me, I have a question. Would love to hear from you all as we have this time. We've also put in our contact information here. Definitely as you're kind of going through these resources and now you have more questions or we'd like to engage your team in a conversation, please just let us know. A question in the app, what guidelines do you use to make sure you're using the best curriculum for your students' goals, favorite platforms? I would say we're not curricular experts necessarily. Right. But I think, again, thinking through the curriculum that you currently offer, maybe if there's a course that you really want to enhance or become more robust, or, a lot of times too, we see, I'm going to stop sharing for a moment here. What we see a lot too is, courses where there's like an introductory level course and then there's a subsequent course after that. And you see a lot of like student fall off, right? So maybe you have like 100 students take the intro course, and then you only have 8 who want to do like the follow-up course. That can be a moment where you're like, all right, what's happening in that introductory level course? Like, how can we look at that? How can we embed work-based learning within that to keep student interest peaked and continuing on into that next course? Favorite platforms? I would love to hear from you.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think we would be hesitant to recommend specific platforms. I think the way that we think about it at Ed Systems, and that I think the Career Development Experience Toolkit does a really good job of, is outlining the kind of things to check off, right? Like what to look for, and that can help. And I think that actually provides those guidelines, right? For figuring out, okay, if we are trying to developmentally achieve X, Y, and Z with students, prepare them in these particular competencies, hit these particular kinds of milestones, and have these different kinds of experiences for young people. It provides kind of that overall framework. So I definitely would encourage whoever dropped that question in the Whova app to check out the Career Development Experience Tool and see what those frameworks are, because there's a lot of really helpful in that toolkit that really can help walk you through the steps. Heather's memoir is a tremendous work, and it really is a tremendous resource for folks. So definitely check that out. And as we noted in the deck is available to folks, and it has all these links. I know I dropped some of the links in the chat, but there's a lot of links and didn't want to flood the chat. So definitely check out the deck and all of those resources, and feel free to email us as well. But the frameworks and templates in the Career Development Experience Toolkit, even if you're actually implementing something that's a little bit lighter lift, actually I think still provides.
Right. You can really build them up through that continuum, just like the more capable and confident that person's going to feel at something like an internship or an apprenticeship, right? Because they'll have had a lot of context there too, and they're not going to show up like I had some interns do and say, I don't even want to work in this industry area. I don't know why I'm here. Like they would have had a continuum that really told them, like, this is something I'm very much interested in. Thanks, Paul. We like to provide good information. And
we love spreading the word. There's nothing we like more than spreading the word. Actually, no, the thing we like more is seeing the information being useful to folks and seeing the exciting work that's happening in the field. But it also, we are happily the messengers here.
I think one of my favorite compliments I've gotten recently, I'm going to do a little pat on the back. I had someone from like a small, very small rural town in West Central Texas reach out about the iWin site. And they were like, as I was looking at work-based learning and trying to figure all this out, like your site was the most like implementable, did I say that word right? Implementable, I don't know. The most like ready to use to kind of support their work in work-based learning. And so I do very much like the goal of the iWin site is that you can take those resources and run with them for the most part, or get inspired and think about what you can do in your space. But was very excited to see a very small town in West Central Texas loving out what Illinois is up to. Well, thank you all again. Again, we can hang out if there's questions. Feel free to put them in the chat or unmute.
Yeah, thank you so much for attending this Forum for Excellence session. Please be sure to provide feedback on the session by clicking the Rate This Session button in the Whova app agenda. And we'd also like you to take this time to direct you to our on-demand sessions, which you can access at any time during or after the conference. You can access those by locating the Resources tab on your Whova app and then clicking On Demand. Feel free to follow us on our social media platforms as well for all things forum, all things forum. Use the hashtags Forum for Excellence 21 or Excellence for Equity, and I'm going to put those in the chat because they use the number. Oh,
thanks everyone for being on.
Dawn already did. Thanks, Dawn. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Emily and Heather. And yeah, I can keep this open up for a few more minutes for questions. And other than that, I don't see any other questions in the chat.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, all.
Thanks for the opportunity to be here.
All right, are you ready for me to close it out?
All right. Have a good afternoon.
Thanks, Don.
Bye.
Thank you all. Bye, everyone.